They went in. Remember, we said originally, they said that you can't go ahead. They said that they went in for the purpose of a schwitz, right? They weren't going to use the bathhouse at Yom Tov. You weren't able to use the bathhouse for for bathing, but because the Gemara said, you see, if you look at the Tanur Rabbanan, we'll go back to that point. Tanur Rabbanan on 48.2, the right side, right? You got it, Tanur Rabbanan? Merchash Epoka Nekavov, everyone got it? 48.2, right column. You have it, Simon, about 8 lines from the top. Tanur Rabbanan. Merchash Shepokaku Nekavov. If you have a bathhouse that you close the vents, morning Adam, Me'erev Shabbat, from before Shabbat. So as you know, you can't go to the bathhouse on Shabbat. You can't use the bathhouse to bathe on Shabbat. But if you close the vents before Shabbat, so now we know it was not heated up on Shabbat. So if it's not heated up on Shabbat, then Mutter Shabbat Roches Bom Biyad. So after Shabbat, you go ahead and you could use the water that's in you can open up the vents, let the water be heated up now. Since the water wasn't heated up on Shabbat, so you're not gaining from this act of water being heated up on Shabbat. So therefore you could use it Motzei Shabbat. Right after Shabbat, you could go ahead and use the water in this bathhouse. If they would have left the fires on, meaning if they left the vents open, that means the water was heated up on Shabbat. If the water was heated up on Shabbat, that means we are afraid that maybe you would come to stoking on Shabbat. Therefore, we would not allow you to benefit from those waters being on, from the vents being open throughout the Shabbat. And therefore, if we won't let you benefit, therefore after Shabbat, you would have to wait the amount of time that it would take you to heat up the bathhouse. So you shouldn't have gained from the fact that it was heated up on Shabbat. But if you did not benefit, if it was not heated up on Shabbat because the vents were closed, so then after Shabbat, Motzei Shabbat, Meroches Bom Biyad, you could go ahead and wash right away. Pokun Nekavov Me'erev Yom Tov. If you close the holes before Yom Tov, so L'macha Nechnas L'Maziyah. The next day, you can enter into the bathhouse on Yom Tov and take a hot bath, meaning a schwitz, not going into the water, just sweating up on Yom Tov. At least originally they were allowed to do that. And then you could go ahead and throw water on yourself after you took your schwitz in the outside chamber, not in the inside chamber, because if you go take water in the inside chamber, people might think that you actually bathe in that bathhouse. You could throw water on you. Now the question is, what kind of water did you throw on you? Did you throw cold water on you, hot water on you? We've established before, it seems that you can't take even a hot shower on Yom Tov. That's how, therefore some say that the understanding would be you throw cold water on you. Now, Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Ma'asav of Merchash of Bnei Brak. There was a story in the bathhouse of Bnei Brak, Shepoka Nekov Me'erev Yom Tov. They had to close the vents before Yom Tov. L'mocha, so they did the right thing, right? The vents were closed. The water's not being heated up on Yom Tov. L'mocha nichnas Rabbi Elazar ben Azai Rabbi Akiva. Elazar ben Azai Rabbi Akiva entered, v'ziu, and they took a schwitz, v'o v'yatzu v'nishtatu v'beis hachitzon. And they went ahead and they washed themselves. Also, again, after they took the schwitz in the bathhouse, they went out to the outside room where they washed their bodies with, let's say, we'll learn it means cold water. Ella shechamin shelo mechupin b'nesarim. The hot water in this bathhouse was not just that the vents were closed. It was even actually the hot water in the bathhouse was covered with boards. So now, if if the hot water in the bathhouse is covered with boards, so then the water that they actually use to throw on them, nobody. First of all, nobody was. If the hot water was covered with boards, no one's going to say they took a bath in the hot water. That's how someone want to understand. Some learned the Gemara that let's say this is how some Rishonim learned. They took a steam. Let's say they went into the inside room to take a steam bath. The outside room they threw hot cold water on themselves to get rid of the sweat. But is anybody going to suspect that they? But the fact that the water itself that was in the bathhouse was covered with boards, there's no way in the inside, so therefore there's no way you could have taken a bath there.
Right. So the fact that they went in there and it came out all wet didn't raise concerns.
Right. So nobody thought that they actually bathed in the bathhouse itself. And I mean, they were more strict. I mean, it wasn't necessary to have it covered with boards. As long as the vents were closed before Yom Tov, we said that should be enough. But it seems that they were more strict. That's how some understand the Gemara. Others have.
So they could not have used the water that was covered, even though that water wasn't needed during Shabbat. Right?
During Yom Tov, right? Exactly.
Oh,
right, exactly. They couldn't use it. Now, others want to make others have different reading of the Gemara, where the Gemara is saying that they washed in the outer room with the hot water. But that hot water, everybody knows, was not heated on Yom Tov. I mean, they threw that hot water on them, but it was not heated on Yom Tov because the boards covered but the board had covered the water, so therefore it's obvious it wasn't heated on Yom Tov. But then they asked the question, but how could they throw on themselves hot water on Yom Tov? We thought you can't throw hot water on yourself on Yom Tov. Unless some want to suggest perhaps maybe it's Shabbat, you can't take a hot shower. Yom Tov, you could throw hot water on yourself. Hot water that was heated, meaning the hot water that's heated up before Yom Tov. Meaning the hot water that was heated up before Yom Tov, some maybe would say, and maybe you could throw it. I mean, we said you can't use hot water on yourself, even if it's heated before Shabbat. You can't take a bath with hot water that's heated before Shabbat. You can't take a shower with hot water. Even with water that's heated before Shabbat, you can't throw that hot water on you. Right? We said the same way you can't take a bath with hot water that was heated before Shabbat. You fill up a bathtub. Friday afternoon you can't take a bath with that. You can't take throw that water on your body also that was heated up before Shabbat. We were very strict about it because if you're going to allow, right? We had a machlokas. If you allow throwing the hot water on yourself, take a shower with hot water heated before Shabbat, you might come to take a bath with hot water that was heated before Shabbat. But maybe this stringency of not taking a shower with hot water that was heated before the Shabbat, maybe that only applies to Shabbat. Maybe on Yom Tov, you could actually use hot water that was heated before Shabbat to use that as a throw that on you. So maybe that's how some want to explain that. Maybe that's what the Gemara is saying, that when they went to the outer room and they threw the hot water on them, it was because this hot water, maybe there's a more leniency for hot water that was cooked before Yom Tov. So this is how some of the commentary wants to explain on right. So they say over here, they were careful from Rashi. They were careful that the hot water that was in the bathhouse was covered with boards, in order that it should not add to the heat in the hot water that's in the outside room. So there is the way Rashi's learning. There's hot water in the inside the actual main bathhouse. There's hot water in the outside room, and they're using the hot water in the outside room to throw on their body. But people, in order to ensure that that hot water in the outside room did not get actually heated up on Yom Tov, got added heat on Yom Tov, the fact that the hot water in the inside room was covered with boards, so therefore that ensured that the hot water outside was not heated up on Yom Tov, because there's no added heat, because there's no heat to add, because the main source of heat is from the hot water in the inside, and that was covered. That's how Rashi understands the Gemara. And therefore, there's a question on Rashi's pshat. How could they use hot water in the outside room? Tosha suggests maybe it means there was maybe Yom Tov is different. Maybe you could use water that was heated up before Yom Tov to throw on, take a shower with, right? If you want to throw water on your body, maybe that's what this opinion at least holds. But then Tosfos brings that Tosefta had a different text that they threw cold water on themselves, right? So that's a question. Okay, we're continuing in the Gemara. But this will not, this even according to this Tosfos' idea, it will not allow take a hot shower on Yom Tov with water that was heated up on Yom Tov. Can't actually heat up the water on Yom Tov itself. Now, when the matter came according to the majority of the rabbis, so Amru, they said, even if the hot water is not, even if it's not covered with boards, even if the hot water is not covered with boards, you're allowed to go ahead, the vents were closed, you could go ahead and wash and rinse with the water in the outside room. However, when there was, now we're turning the page for 48, 48.3. Now the Gemara says, when there was an increase in the people that sinned, Anna, if you want to send to the group, when there was an increase in the people that sinned, they forbade that you can't even have a schwitz. Take a schwitz, take a sweat in even in a bathhouse. They said you can't take a schwitz, and the Gemara says, and then the Gemara continues, and the Gemara says, "Am vatiod shokrachin," the bathhouses of the big cities, which were very large, you can actually walk in the bathhouse, walk through it, and you don't have to be concerned. Meaning the bathhouses of the city were big. There was not so much heat in there, and if you enter the inside, you really it's not. There's no guarantee you're going to become schwitz. You're going to get heated. You're going to get sweated up. Therefore, even though they forbade sweating yourself up on Shabbat, but you could go ahead and go into the bathhouses and you don't have to be concerned maybe that people are going to think you entered for the purpose of getting a schwitz, because it doesn't really do a real job necessarily to get a real schwitz. So they have here a summary regarding washing on Shabbat and Yom Tov at this point. They say you cannot wash, or you could not water that was heated up on Shabbat. Okay? Simon, Adam, we're going to talk, and Asaf, we're going to talk a little bit of summary about what we said until now. Water that was heated up on Shabbat, you can't wash in that water, right? That water is forbidden to use. You can't wash, you can't, any part of your body, you can't use water that was heated up on Shabbat. Right? If you heat water before Shabbat, good morning, Ezra. Heat water that was heated up before Shabbat, you can go ahead and wash your hands, right? You want to wash your face, but you can't wash. But if water was heated up on the Shabbat itself, that you can't go ahead and use to to wash to wash any part of your body. Now, water that was heated up before Shabbat, like we said, you could go ahead and wash your hands or your feet. But you can't wash or throw upon your body or the whole body or majority of your body. Meaning, if somehow a person wants to wash different parts of his body on the Shabbat, he has to make sure he doesn't wash using hot water that was heated before Shabbat, right? Hot water before Shabbat, he could wash up to the majority of his body. He cannot. He can wash his hands, his feet, or he can wash limb by limb up to not majority of his body. Okay, that's water that was heated up on Yom Tov. You can't wash your body with. You can't shower that water heated up on Yom Tov. Only your hands and your feet. Now, he says there's a discussion. We said Shabbat, water that's heated up on Shabbat, you can't use at all to wash yourself. Water was heated up on Yom Tov, you can wash your hands and your feet. Okay. What about, okay, now water that was heated up before Yom Tov, water that's heated up before Yom Tov. So they say the Rif, the Rambam hold, you could go ahead and actually bathe in that water as long as it's not as long as you're not in a bathhouse. You could take a bath, according to the Rif and the Rambam. You could take a bath in hot water that was heated up before Yom Tov, as long as you're not doing it in a bathhouse. Tosfos holds water that was heated up before Yom Tov. You can't take a bath and you can't take a shower. Doesn't make a difference in a bathhouse, outside a bathhouse. But you could wash your whole body one limb at a time. So it's a little complicated regarding okay, all these details, and then they say earlier, regarding taking a shower with cold water, right? So they quote earlier on Lamed Tesam Beis, Haran 19, Lamed Tesam Beis, Haran 19. Let's see what we got here. He says, he quotes, even though you're allowed to technically take a cold bath on Shabbat, there's an early custom brought down maybe 900 years ago, Trumat Hadeshin, that we don't bathe on Shabbat and we don't bathe on Yom Tov even in cold water. Okay, so that's okay. So there's a lot going on about washing and bathing and showering and bathing and water even with water that was heated before the Yom Tov. So we see there's a whole discussion. But what seems to be pretty clear, what comes out pretty clear, seems that water that was heated up on Yom Tov, right? And I think this is where we're gonna look more into maybe the Yalkut Yosef, maybe in the near future. Water that was heated up on Yom Tov, um, to take a hot shower on Yom Tov seems to be a problem. Hot shower means you're heating up the water on Yom Tov. If you're heating up the water on Yom Tov, taking a hot shower seems to be a problem. On everyone just stick to the cold showers on Yom Tov based on what we've been learning until now. Even though I think this is where I think the mistake could come. We know you could turn on the hot water on Yom Tov to wash your hands. You want to wash the dishes on Yom Tov, you could put on the hot water. You want to wash your face, you could put on the hot water. But to take a hot shower seems to be different. That's what we've come out so far. We haven't seen any real leniency so far at all, but a hot shower with water that was heated up on Yom Tov itself. Okay, so now the Gemara says, "My ovrei avera." We said we're now back on 40A3. What does it mean? There was a misharobo over my ovrei avera in the first column, like about 10 lines in the end. What does it mean? There was an increase of people who sinned, right? And by the way, when there's an increase of people that sin, sometimes that causes everybody else to lose. That because of them, we have to go ahead and also, everybody sometimes loses because we have to make a decree to protect. We don't want them. We don't want people sinning when we see a certain trend. So, my Misharob over verse. This is what the Gemara says. Because as a result of those over Avera, good morning. Morning, good to see you, David. It says that as a result of the over Avera, they forbade you to take a shvitz. So let's see what was the story. The Omer of Shimon Pasi, Omer of Yehuda Shimon Levi, Bakapara. Shimon Pasi said the name of Yeshua ben Levi, the name of Bakapara. B'tchila, in the beginning, before they made a decree that you can't bathe on hot water on Shabbat, right? Hot water that was warm before Shabbat, right? They filled up the bathhouse before Shabbat. Originally, historically, the Jewish community would be taking baths in hot water that was heated before Shabbat. So it was heated before Shabbat day on a Friday afternoon. They went to the bathhouse, like people go to a mikveh. They went to on Shabbat. They went to the bathhouse, and they washed and they took a bath on Shabbat morning, whenever, anytime on Shabbat they wanted to take a bath. They took a bath because what's the issue? It was heated up before Shabbat. The water was heated up before Shabbat, and they were careful not to squeeze the hair out, the water out of the hair, not to carry the water with them. Whatever it was, they were careful. There shouldn't be any issues. They took a bath on Shabbat in the old days. But then what happened? Hischilu habalanim, the people who ran the bathhouses, lahachem b'Shabbat. They started playing games. You know what they did? They heated the water on Shabbat, and they said no. The water's hot from before Shabbat. The managers of the bathhouse said it was heated up before Shabbat, but really it wasn't heated up before Shabbat. It's heated up on Shabbat because they wanted to have a good bath. They want to keep a good business running. So how do you keep a good business running? Got to keep the fire. Got to keep the water hot. So how do you keep the water hot? They kept the water hot by keeping it hot on Shabbat. So you understand? Guy wants to take a bath Shabbat morning, right? In the times when it was permitted. The water to stay hot overnight is not easy, right? You want to take a hot bath, that means it's already 12. Especially look at the winter months. It gets dark at what time? You have to stop doing work after 4 o'clock, and it has to stay hot till 7 o'clock in the morning. So the guys who ran the houses, they started heating up the water on Shabbat, V'omrim, and they said me'erev Shabbat hu chamu, and they would say it was heated up before Shabbat. They would be lying, right? Now, in the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, it says an interesting thing. They have a recording over there that the managers of the bathhouses did not actually heat up the water on Shabbat. Morning, Ronnie. I saw you tell Tefillin this morning. You know, they didn't actually heat up the water on Shabbat. Rather, they made a big fire before Shabbat. It's a lot of wood, and they left the vents open. The vents that the wood they had the wood underneath, then the vents, and then the vents, the holes opened up and it heated up the water that was above. They left the vents open because they wanted it to become hot by itself on Shabbat, leaving the vents open. But we said you can't go ahead and leave the vents open because why? Because you might have to stoke the wood on the Shabbat itself. So they did not do a biblical violation of actually heating the water on Shabbat, but they violated a rabbinic violation. So that meaning because they asked the question, generally Jews are not suspected of cooking intentionally on Shabbat. You know, even if it's a money issue, that I'll be a better bathhouse. But we don't find that the Jewish people are suspected that they're going to intentionally. So therefore, they want to say that it wasn't the Jerusalem Talmud has understanding that it wasn't they actually cooked on Shabbat Adam, but they did something which was in violation of the rabbinic fence. Like we spoke about in great length before Shabbat, we spoke about the food has to reach a certain amount of cooking before Shabbat. If let's say if a person would want to keep the food on a fire before Shabbat, right? We already have this in our bones, right? We spent so much time on it, everybody, right? We should know it by in our sleep. It should wake you up in the middle of the night, right? The Chananya Rabbanan, that we saw the lenient opinion holds as long as Chananya holds, as long as it reached a third or a half cooked before Shabbat, you could technically leave food on a fire, according to that lenient opinion, because you're not going to come stoke the fire because it's already a certain amount cooked. But if it's not a certain amount cooked, we said then everybody agrees if it's not a third or a half, you cannot leave it on a fire before an open fire before Shabbat because you might come to stoke the what? As the right to come stoke the coals, right, Simon? Now, so therefore, the Rabbanim, once the rabbis saw that they were leaving the vents open, so therefore the rabbis and therefore they were leaving an opportunity that they could make they could actually come stoke it on Shabbat. Therefore the rabbi said, you know what, don't bathe on Shabbat at all. It's too, you know, because there's too many of these managers that are leaving these vents open on Shabbat. That's even if you close the vents before Shabbat, sometimes the people that are not honest ruin it for the rest of society. Right? We have to do certain things because there's some people. You know, you go to a drugstore today, you'll go to a pharmacy. You have to wait for the guy to open up. Gotta get a key to open up something. You want to get the Tylenol, I gotta get a key to open up Tylenol. Or toothpaste. Why? Because of all those people that are not honest, right, David? And they go ahead and they shoplift. What's that called? Shoplifting. Therefore, now the honest people have to wait. You got to get the manager to open. You got to get a representative to open up something. That's all part of because of those not scrupulous people. We all have to suffer. You know, we have to wait, and and whatever other things that people have to because of those people that are not honest. Um, so what happened was, therefore, back to the Gemara. They in our text of our Gemara, they actually heated up on Shabbat. But the managers of the bathhouse said, no. It was heated up before Shabbat. Good morning. Okay, tov. Good to see you. and they forbade the hot water, not to bathe. We're talking about not bathing in hot water on Shabbat. Even if it was prepared and heated up before Shabbat, you can't go in and do that. But v'tiru etazeya. But they said that you could go ahead if you want to go into a bathhouse on Shabbat and you want to not take a bath, you want to take a schwitz, you want to get heated up. So originally they allowed you to do that. But there was still many people that still wanted it, many people who weren't scrupulous, and they would go ahead and they would wash in the hot water in the bathhouse. And they would say, I didn't wash in the hot water, I just took a schwitz. Again, that's not, again, what would be washing in hot water in the bathhouse that was heated before Shabbat is a rabbinic issue, right? Because if the water was heated before Shabbat, there's no Torah prohibition to bathe in hot water that was heated before Shabbat. But they would be violating the rabbinic law by washing in the hot water on Shabbat. But Va'omrim, they say, we're only taking a schwitz. We're only taking a schwitz. Remember, not every Jew is a Yirat Shamayim. Not every Jew is God-fearing. Not every Jew is controls themselves when it comes to good morning. Not every Jew controls themselves when they need to control themselves, right? Not every Jew, when you're not supposed to go ahead and have that that bath on Shabbat, they might go ahead and once you see, like, it's when a person wants to watch his diet, if you have the cake in the house, watch out. The best thing is what? Don't have the cake in the house. So if you allow the guy into the bathhouse, David, you let him go in for the schwitz. It's a hot bath. Then next thing you know, he's in the bath. You let him in. You let the cake in the house. Right, Simon? Just don't let the cake in the house. Good to see you, Jonathan. So he says, so Vadayin, okay. So Asulahem Esazeh. So therefore the rabbi said, we can't even allow you to take a schwitz. We all would have been able to go for a schwitz on Shabbat, but because of all these people that are not honest, you hear that? That's when they take a schwitz, they go for a bath instead of a schwitz. We can't take up schwitz, right? They ruined it for everybody else. So now, the Gemara continues, but the Tiru B'chame Tiveria. But the waters of Tiveria, they were allowing you to wash, take a bath in the hot springs of Tiveria. Why? The hot springs of Tiveria, it's not heated by fire. It's naturally hot. So you're not going to, what's the whole issue with taking a bath? We're afraid you're going to come to stoke the fires, heat it up on Shabbat. You're not heating up the waters of Tiveria on Shabbat. They're just naturally hot. You don't need to do anything to the waters of Tiveria, right? Therefore, they allowed the people to go ahead and take a bath in the waters of Tiveria. But Vadayin, you still had those people, David, that they would wash and they would go ahead and they would use water that was heated from fire, because the water of Tiveria is not such clean water. You ever see the water of Tiveria? It's not so clean. The hot springs of Tiveria, and therefore they would wash in real clean hot water, and you would say something, say, "Oh, we were using waters of Tiveria." They'd make that so therefore the rabbi said you can't even use waters of Tiveria. We'll see tomorrow to continue. These characters, right? These characters, but you know what? People are not God-fearing, they play games. And sometimes they play games with rabbinic law. They don't realize the importance of how to keep rabbinic law. And they make light of rabbinic law. That's only, you ever hear that? It's only Rabbanan, it's only rabbinic. Only the rabbi said it. If you don't, they're rational. And once you don't follow what the rabbis say, you don't follow. I want to tell you, if anybody who tells you, the rabbis are too strict, we'll just follow Torah law, you'll see all those people, I don't think they follow Torah law. Any person who told me that, the rabbis, I just want to keep Torah law, they're not keeping Torah law. It just shows you the only way you can keep Torah law, Ezra, keep rabbinic law. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Ezra, it's great to have you back.
Thank you.
We miss you. David, it's great to have you. Great to have you. David, you heard something. Asaf, have a great day. You pick stuff up. You're trying to pick up stuff, right? And everything, exactly, and everything